Kelly, good morning. How are we doing?
I'm good. How are you doing?
I am doing, to quote the great Dave Ramsey, better than I deserve. How can I help?
So I've struggled with anxiety for a while, but haven't needed medication in years.
Okay.
I've recently started taking meds again to help with the increased anxiety of 2020.
Yes.
And I'm struggling with feelings of failure and brokenness. I'm not quite sure how to navigate that.
So you say you haven't taken medication in a while. When did you last take medication?
About 10 years ago.
Tell me about the circumstances surrounding that.
My husband and I, at the time we were engaged and moved to Florida away from family and friends. And we're planning a wedding at the time too. So there was a lot of stress going on. And saw a doctor, and they thought it was a good idea, since I had a history of depression as well, that medication would be the best thing for me to be on to get through all of the stressors.
And so how long did you take medication for, just to get you through that season?
Yeah, I think it ended up being about a year.
Okay. And then what are the things you did to help heal during that time, in addition to medication?
I guess I kept busy with my job at the time, socializing with friends, getting out of the house, going on weekend trips with my husband, and just different things to keep my mind off of what might be going on that wasn't so great in my life.
So fast forward 10 years to right now. What finally pushed you over the edge and said, I need to go see a doctor again?
I know we're all in the same position with the pandemic, and
hold on.
People are.
I don't want you to compare your situation to others. I want you just to tell your story, because your story by itself has value. And I know other people's got it worse. I got that. I want you to tell me what happened in your life that made you one day open your eyes and say, I got to go see somebody.
I try not to watch the news, but I have continued to go to the gym to exercise throughout everything, and there are screens everywhere there. So
Right.
you see it's getting worse. Stay home. Don't go anywhere. Don't see family for Thanksgiving. And it was probably about 2 weeks ago that I hit rock bottom. And
but what besides the news? Something else?
My mom, I love her. She recently retired. I get calls every day from her asking, how are cases down where you are? Are you guys okay? What's going on? So that kind of triggers the oh my gosh, like this is getting bad. This is crazy. And that just, I see her name pop up on my caller ID, and it just freaks me out, because I know we're about to talk about stuff that gets my anxiety going.
So back up a little bit. Do you have a good relationship with your mom?
Kind of. It's not great.
Okay, so the answer to that question is no. I can answer that for you, because you're a good human being, and you're going to say kind of. So I appreciate that about you. Walk me back to when you were a teenager. How did you and your mom get along?
Not great.
What does not great mean?
I wasn't really given a whole lot of choices in how my life was going at the time. I was required to do these certain lessons or required to take these courses in school. So I didn't really feel like I had a lot of flexibility or freedom or voice in, day-to-day choices. It was kind of picked for me.
What about your dad? How'd you get along with your old man?
Growing up as a teenager, he and I fought all the time, but now he is probably my favorite person in the entire world.
That's awesome.
He's meant more to me as I've become a parent. I have a lot of respect for him.
And tell me about your kids.
I have one little boy. He just turned 7. We would have loved to have more, but he's the one we were given, and I'm so proud of him. He's
That's
amazing.
awesome. Okay, so I'm going to answer your question in a bigger funnel than the one you initially called me about, but I will get to your question directly. Okay?
Okay. Mm-hmm.
So a couple of things to note. Number one, anxiety and depression are on the same trend line. They are not distinct things like a broken ankle and cancer are. Okay? So they usually work in tandem together. And one leads to the other one, or one will push you towards feelings of one or the other, okay? So I don't want you to think that you've got all of these quote-unquote things. Your body has a particular way of taking care of you, and it will usually start with an alarm system, and it will usually start with another alarm, and then another one, and it will get louder and louder until one of the safest, most comfortable ways of shutting those alarms off is turning the lights off and getting under the covers and watching Netflix, or drinking, or fill in the blank with any number of numbing behaviors, working 120 hours a week. The second thing is, and you've probably heard me say this 100 times, I'm going to say it 1,000 times more. All anxiety is an alarm system. And the alarms go off generally when someone is out of control, they don't have control over their situation, when they are disconnected, or when their body is fearful of not being safe. And so when you backed me up to your life situations, you grew up in a house where you had no control. People didn't care what you had to say about things. They dictated to you the way you were going to be and what you were going to do. Then you entered a season where you packed up and left everyone and everything you know to a new adventure where you were totally disconnected, you had little to no control, you were signing up, and your husband may be incredible, he may be the greatest guy ever, but you were still hitching your wagon to somebody else, right? That's an unknown entity. How's this thing going to work? Starting a new job, you have a history of depression, and then finally your alarms get so loud that you go see a doctor, which I'm proud of you for going. Good for you. And then we reach this new place where you've got this new moment in history, and it's not a new moment, but it's new for us, where literally we're still in the middle of it. We're a couple of days out from Christmas, and people are still throwing crayons at each other about the election. But you realize we don't control much of anything when it comes to democracy. I get my vote, and that's it. I control very little when it comes to a pandemic sweeping through. I control very little when it comes to the economy and who's telling me I can work and can't work. And then you throw on top of that infertility challenges that you've experienced for years, which then lead to identity questions. Who am I? Why isn't my body working for me? Why can't I be the fill in the blank? My husband's identity is included in this. And suddenly your alarms are ringing off the hook, right? And so here's why I'm telling you these things. Number one, I've experienced everything I've just told you about, except I experienced infertility on the other side of that. I've been crippled by anxiety myself, where my alarms are just yelling and yelling and yelling. And it's almost always environmental in nature. It's almost always about our ecosystem. What is the world we've created for ourselves? And what is the world we're inheriting, right? What is the world we are just simply in? And I'm telling you that because I don't want you to believe for 1 second that you're broken, that your body's not working, that it's revolting, and that there's any sort of shame about what's going on with you. Okay?
Okay.
Your body's working exactly how it was designed to. And then you layer on top of it all of the complexities, a mom who still loves hanging on to you and controlling you and giving you advice. And that's not because she's ugly or mean or hateful. That's her way of showing you that she loves you, right?
Yes.
You've got that little boy. I've got a 10-year-old and an almost 5-year-old. And so you and I are both looking at this world our kids are going to grow up in going, what in the world, right?
Mm-hmm.
And
yes.
my alarms are going off too, okay? So you did something brave and you went to talk to a doctor. Here's what anxiety medication will do for you. It simply turns the alarms off. It shuts the alarms down. It turns the nozzle down on those things, turns the knob down on those things, and makes them not so loud anymore. And here's the important thing about taking anxiety medication. It's only as good as the work you do getting well when the alarms are off, right? And so what that's going to look like for you is figuring out boundaries with your mom, maybe for the first time. Maybe it will be a conversation with her where you say, Mom, you call every day and I love you. I will not talk about the COVID numbers in my area anymore. I'm done with that conversation. It may mean that you sit with your husband and you say the words out loud that are in your heart about how many kids you wish you'd had versus the beautiful, extraordinary son that you do have. And putting yourself out there, being vulnerable to hearing what your husband has to say about his thoughts. And y'all may have never had that conversation. You may have, but you may haven't. All that to say is there are boundary conversations, there are intimacy conversations, and intimacy is just letting your thoughts finally be heard. It may mean that you're going to go see a counselor and learn how to engage and be in deep relationships with people that are close to you, how to create new relationships, which is a skill none of us have, myself included, that we've got to learn how to do those things. But there is no shame in going to see a doctor and saying, I need help turning these alarms off for a season so I can come up with some new skills, some new strategies, some new moments, some new conversations, some new boundaries that are going to help me be well moving forward. Is that fair?
Yes, very much.
You are worth an environment that supports and sustains you. You're a good mom, Kelly. And you're a good wife. And you're a good citizen. And while we're on this topic, let's just have this conversation. People have asked me about it a lot. I'll probably end up doing an entire show on this someday. But here's the conversations we need to have about medication. Over the past 40 years, 50 years, and further back, and everyone's going to try to nitpick this thing, so let's just be open and honest and exhale. I'm going to give a 50,000-foot overview of this. We have become enamored, obsessed, addicted with psychopharmaceuticals, psychotropic medications, meds for mental health issues. And this stems from a narrative that's been given to us from doctors, from medical researchers, and most importantly from pharmaceutical companies. And it's a myth that your brain chemistry is broken. Just like some people are born 5'8" and some people are born 6'2", some people are born with low serotonin levels. Some people are born with wacky dopamine levels. And by some people, maybe 25 to 50 freaking percent of the population are born with altered brain chemistry. And here's the thing, it allows us to pass the buck on relationships, on life circumstances, on trauma, on tragedy, on systemic issues like poverty and racism and sexism and abusive relationships. It lets us pass the buck on all of that. And I go to the doctor and I say, I can't get these thoughts out of my head. And many doctors won't ask you, what's going on in your life? Tell me about your childhood. Tell me about your situation right now. Are you safe? They say, yeah, you may have altered serotonin levels. Take this. And if you're just broken, then you didn't do anything wrong. Your environment doesn't matter. You don't need to change anything. You just need to take your pills and head on down the road. Right? We take so many psychotropic drugs as a nation that they are now lacing our drinking water. We pee them out in such mass concentrations that they're in the water that we drink. As one writer said, we're awash in them. Literally, it's in our drinking water now. 1 in 5 U.S. adults, I think it's 1 in 4 women, are on some sort of psychotropic medication for anxiety, for depression, fill in the blank. And the numbers are continuing to increase. And so to put that in perspective, you would think that If we had stumbled on a quote-unquote cure for an illness, for a disease, for a dysfunctional part of the human body, with 1 in 5, 1 in 4 people taking these medications, that the numbers would go down. They would level off. Yet they're not. They are skyrocketing. And contrary to what you probably believe and understand about how research works and how the research companies work, this isn't conspiracy nonsense, blah, blah. This is truth, okay? This isn't me becoming like an internet influencer and exposing. This is just factual, okay? Most antidepressant studies are paid for by pharmaceutical companies. And what that means is they own the positive results of those studies and they own the negative results of those studies. And there's an economic incentive to open a drawer and put the negative studies in the drawer and shut it. They write the reports and present the info at scientific journals. And here's the thing, as we bag on higher ed and we continue to defund colleges, college is way too expensive, that's a whole other conversation. But as we continue to defund the public good, the drug companies come in and they pick up the slack, right? So if we have the University of Texas or Texas Tech University or Texas A&M, those are the 3 big kids from where I'm from, Rice University, whatever. They hire their own scientists. They do their studies. They get grants from the federal government, from the state government. They use tuition dollars and they do a study on something and they put it out to the world. And the scientists bat it back and forth. It's called peer review. They fight back and forth over the results. And over time, consensus comes to the top. And you have to put forth the studies that don't work. You have to put forth the studies that do work, which lead to new studies. When a pharmaceutical company runs those things, they hire their own doctors. They hire their own doctor researchers, medical researchers. And then they do the studies. And they just need 2. They need 2 to go right. Meaning they can do a study, as Johann Harari says in his book, Lost Connections, which is an extraordinary read. They can do 1,000 studies. 998 of them on a particular drug fail. But 2 of them, one of them with a population of 16 and one of them a population of 100. And the population was 16, 9 or 10 of those people, for whatever reason, showed some trend towards positive. This pill helped them. And then in the study of 100, 52, 53 people got some help. A little bit of help here and there, or maybe a lot of help, right? 998 studies said this drug has no effects, or it may even be hurtful to you. You just need 2. And the FDA will stamp it and say that that drug is good to go to market. And so here's the deal. There is zero evidence for the low serotonin myth. That your brain produces low serotonin. Some people are just born that way, and taking pills will raise it and fix you. As Dr. Moncrief says, there's no evidence there's a chemical imbalance in depressed or anxious people's brains. The DSM, this manual, they call it the Psychiatric Bible. It's a real thick book that's got all the diagnosis, right? You've got this, you've got that, you've got this. The manual that supposedly determines a person's diagnosis, it's a mess. It's a big mess. And it almost exclusively never takes into environment, context, being at a really controlled work environment, in an abusive relationship, from a traumatic childhood, in a system that's traumatizing you. Those things don't matter. It's all about this diagnosis in your brain. Here's the truth. Almost entirely, we don't know why medications work. I'm talking about psychotropic medications. We don't know why they work. We simply don't know. There are a number of people who have incredibly positive results and they do well. It could be from placebo. That could be from actual support and help. And here's the deal. I am one of them. I got bent low by anxiety to the point that I was spinning out all over the place. And I took anxiety medications for a season and they worked awesome. When I'd ask my doctor, why do these work? He'd say, I don't know. They were originally designed for congestion And people were reporting, hey, I'm feeling less anxious. And so they are a whole class of drugs that are prescribed off-label, off-brand. But they worked. So here's the broad picture of medication. For folks who are dealing with major depressive disorders, schizophrenia, bipolar, medication is magic. It can be extraordinary, particularly if you are doing it in partnership with a great therapist, with good community groups, with skilled practitioners who know how to teach you how to do relationships. And there are mental health issues, again, like schizophrenia, bipolar, some of these things that have brain lesions. Your brain is actually different, okay? There are others, like myself, who took anxiety medication for a season, and it worked wonders. And I took it for a season, for a specific season, and I partnered with a doctor whose goal was to teach me how to take ownership of my own health. He didn't tell me, and I had two doctors, one holistic doctor and one medical doctor. Neither of them told me I was broken forever. Neither of them told me, hey, your brain is just dysfunctional and it's always going to be that way, so you need to take medicine. The analogy I got was, hey, you were training for a marathon and you stepped off the curb and really messed up your ankle. And it just so happens your ankle's in your head. The alarms got going for so long and you were eating trash and not sleeping and isolating yourself for so long that your alarms just took over, right? They just took over. And so for a season, we're going to ask you to not run. Don't run. You need to go to a doctor and get your leg taken care of. And then you're going to have to go through rehab, physical therapy, and then you're going to have to start walking, and then you can start jogging, and then you can start training for whatever race you want to run again. And it just so happened all that stuff was in my mind. So for a season, I took some medication. Don't know how it works. My doctor would tell me. He was honest. Dude, I don't know why. My holistic doctor gave me some supplements, and she actually knew more about what those were doing than the pharmaceutical. And we started with the lowest possible dose first. This was my arrangement with my doctor. You get your arrangement with your doctor. I'm not giving you medical advice. I'm telling you what worked for me. And then we decided, hey, we'll move up later if we need to. We never did. And he worked with me on a plan to get off and stay off. And that meant I had to go see a counselor. That meant I had to be really honest with my wife. That meant I had to be really intentional about getting friends and getting connected in my local community. A person is not a person without their environment. It's one of my favorite quotes from Hari's work. A person is not a person without their environment. Medication can help a person's body turn off the alarms, shut down the yelling and screaming and fear responses and trauma responses. And it did that for me. And it's done that for countless other people. But it is not the long-term solution for most everybody. And so just like we just did with Kelly, she is brave and she is strong, and I'm so proud of her for having courage, for being a great mom, being a great partner, and for recognizing I'm not doing well. But seriously, the goal is not to be on medication forever. The goal is to use meds as a bridge to get your life back. So Kelly, thank you so much for your call, for being brave. No shame, no failure, strength. I'm proud of you for doing the work that you need to do to get well. This is step 1. Step 2 is going to be boundaries, relationships, and connection, and finding ways you can control what you can control in your little bitty universe. I'm proud of you.